All right, folks, welcome back. I know it's been a little while, hasn't it? But we are back from our YouTube strike. It is certainly great to be back. And tonight on the Vince Dow Show, we got a lot to talk about. Not just about my YouTube ban, but specifically regarding the new indictment against Trump that they have leaked in Georgia before the grand jury has even voted. So just to give you an idea of how corrupt that trial is going to be, they're writing up indictments before grand juries have even voted. We got to talk about that. Also, this Texas buoy migrant controversy last week. We will follow up on that news. And Vivek Ramaswamy goes back and forth with a Trump supporter on the Candace Owens show. We will give you our reaction. That all tonight and more on the Vince Dow Show. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. It is great to be back. And we are live once again from the great state of Florida. Welcome everyone to the Vince Dow Show. It is August 14th, the year of our Lord 2023. Dang, the summer is going by fast. I am your Galaxy Brain host, Vince Dow, and welcome back to the Vince Dow Show. As usual, folks, everyone right now, be sure to leave a like on the stream, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and of course, if you got questions or comments that you want read and answered, feel free to send them in via the Super Chats. In fact, I know we are just got some Super Chats now, so before we get into tonight's show, let me just read our opening Super Chats and shout out some of our chat. So Burgundy Blue for $5, thank you very much, says, hi Vince, hope your vacation went well. It's good to see you streaming again. How was the week with your family? Well, Burgundy Blue, I was not on vacation with my family. I was in fact banned from YouTube for a week for reasons we are going to talk about in a second, but we will talk about it in a second, so don't worry about it. But I'm not going to say it was the best week because we kind of had no money for a week, but you know, whatever, you know, it is what it is. Okay, we are back. Appreciate the Burgundy Blue, and it is good to see you again, certainly. Friendly Medic for $10 says, we are so back. It is true. We are indeed back. Okay, well, let's address that before we get into anything tonight, which is where I have been for the past week. I'm sure many people have been wondering, you know, is Vince on vacation? Did he just leave? Did he just quit? Did Hillary Clinton find information that he had that... None of those things happened. In fact, we were actually given a 1-week strike from YouTube, and so that's where I've been for a week. I got a community guideline strike, and YouTube would not let me stream or post or do anything for a week. So we actually have been on Rumble for the past week. So if you're not subscribed to the Rumble, now's a good time to do so, because if this does happen again, and obviously, you know, we do multi-stream and all that stuff, be sure to go check out the Rumble. But if you're wondering why I got banned on YouTube, which I'm sure is everyone's question, you know, what did Vince do? Did he interview a leader of the KKK? Like, what did Vince do, right? Well, it was in fact none of those things. I did not do anything all that crazy. It was because I apparently defended the use of self-defense. Okay, so apparently I learned on YouTube as a result of our ban, and like I said, it's good to be back. But new YouTube rule I learned is apparently if you watch an action of self-defense on YouTube and basically say, I believe that action of self-defense was justified, you get banned for that. Apparently, this is the lesson we're now learning. So the context is that some of you guys may remember this too. Remember that video of the Sikh? Remember him? Okay, I'm not going to play it again on YouTube because clearly that got us in trouble last time. And obviously, I was totally in the wrong. He shouldn't have done this, obviously, YouTube. But remember the video of the Sikh where that one dude, that one individual, that one delinquent is robbing the store of its cigarettes, and he's just putting them all in a bag, and the Sikh rushes in and, we'll say, non-fatally defends his store, right? You guys, some of you guys were here when we watched that segment here on YouTube. Well, YouTube got back to me and gave me a 1-week strike because they said it was promoting or inciting violence to watch that action and say that the self-defense was justified, okay? In which case, YouTube, I deeply apologize. Obviously, guys, as we all know, you should never defend yourself against criminals. You know, obviously, and self-defense is very bad and all of that stuff. And so apparently that's the reason why. And what's very interesting about it is that, you know, and I think this is the funniest part of it all, for those of you guys who've seen the video, the part where the guy is stealing cigarettes, YouTube said was completely fine. Okay, just to be clear, right? So he's shoplifting the cigarettes, he's committing crime, he's literally robbing a store on camera. YouTube said, no, there's no problem with that. But the strike starts at the timestamp where the Sikh steps in and starts defending his store. So I'm serious when I say, you know, I'm going to say this and a lot of people are going to think it's tongue-in-cheek. No, I'm being 100% serious. This is according to the strike I received. Apparently it is okay to commit crime on YouTube. It is okay to show, apparently, I don't know, it's okay. Crime is okay on YouTube, but the part where you step in and defend yourself against the criminal, that is, of course, the part that is against YouTube terms of service. Again, we're learning this all for the first time. I didn't know these things, and so to Team YouTube, I deeply do apologize for justifying the use of self-defense. Clearly, I should not have done that, and going forward, I will say that if anyone is, you know, robbing you, how dare you defend yourself? Of course, obviously, right? So that's a situation that we are in now. It is what it is, frankly, at this point. I would just say it's great to be back. Although, one last thing I do want to bring up is if you kind of follow through on this story, the argument that the Team YouTube could hypothetically make, and I guess I see this, is that, well, Vince, you may personally have at the time thought that that action was justified, but what about the law, right? You know, can you necessarily do that? Blah, blah, blah. But I will point out, as a matter of legality at this point, that a few days after the strike, the mayor of Stockton, because unfortunately is California, and so they were talking about maybe pressing charges against that Sikh guy. But I will point this out. In the days that ensued, after the investigation concluded, the mayor of Stockton, California, has now gone out and said that the guy didn't do anything wrong and charges will not be pressed. Okay, so they're not pressing charges against the Sikh guy. In which case, I now say to Team YouTube, okay, at the time you may have said, you know, Vince, there was an ongoing investigation and, you know, it's a gray area whether or not his actions were justified. Now we're at the point where the mayor of Stockton, California, the legal authority in a way on this matter, right? The investigators, the legal system in this country is saying that what the Sikh guy did to the guy robbing his store was completely legal under the law and he will not face charges. To which I now once again say to YouTube, okay, so we saw a legal action of self-defense. Again, there's a legal action of self-defense. I said in that segment that I believe that he was in the moral right. Again, I don't believe this anymore, obviously. I'm very sorry for saying this, but I said at the time, I believe that, you know, he was in the moral justified right to defend himself. And now the legal system agrees. I just don't understand from the YouTube's perspective, whatever. We really know what it's about, right? Which is, it is YouTube, and I am a conservative, and it is what it is. Okay, it is what it is. But we are, of course, back. And one last thing I will say on the front, and then we'll get into the actual show tonight, is that this is, of course, guys, a prime opportunity, a prime example, I should say, to remind everyone that we are obviously always at the mercy of big tech, because even if you try to play within the rules of YouTube, which I genuinely do try to do on this platform, because I don't think it's constructive to just purposely get yourself deplatformed for no reason and then you don't have the platform, right? So I do genuinely try to work within the guidelines of YouTube, but as you see in this case, they are subjective, they are arbitrary, they can just completely be used against you for any reason. So, of course, and you guys know this, you guys are familiar, but the reason I'm saying that is because I think now is a good time to plug to everyone that, of course, two things. Firstly, we do have a Rumble channel. Okay, link in the description, or you can just search up Vince Dao on Rumble. Reason I say to plug that, even if you want to continue watching here on YouTube, is just so that in case, you know, we do go down again, we could get a second strike, we could get permanently banned. You know, at least you'll be on the Rumble, so that way you'll know where the content is. Okay, so that's number one. Everyone, just in case this happens again, because it can. Obviously, I'm not naive on that front. Go subscribe to the Rumble, and then also be sure to sign up, also in the link in the description, to my email list at vincedaotv.com. Okay, guys, again, that is vincedaotv.com. All right. And the reason I say sign up to the email list, besides, you know, just giving me an email list subscriber, it's free, by the way, free, but is because the next time this happens, as some of you guys knew, you were like, where were you the past week? Were you on vacation? What happened? if we do get a strike from YouTube, I'm not able to go and notify you guys if we got the strike. It literally just locks my entire account, which has happened this past week. So the reason I say the email list is that if you're on the email list, and the second, and those of you who were already on the email list know this, excuse me, must take a sip of water. Okay. Anyways, if you're on the email list, you'll be able to be notified, right? I'll send out an email saying, okay, we've gone down from YouTube. Everyone go to Rumble or Telegram or whatever we're doing at that point, okay? So that's the thing, is that if we ever do get deplatformed from anywhere, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, best place to keep up with me is on the email list, and I can 100% inform everyone reliably and have that platform. So there's just the housekeeping on that front. If you're wondering where I've been, yeah, I was we were in YouTube jail the past week, and needless to say, it is certainly great to be back. With all that said, ladies and gentlemen, as usual, if you do want to super chat to support the show, obviously we have not been with you guys for a week. It is all greatly appreciated. Feel free to do so. And let's get into our stories tonight. But before we do that, I know we did get a $5 super chat here from Trigonaut, who says, at this rate, they will indict Trump for leaving the toilet seat up at the White House 3 years ago. None of it will mean anything in the end. Thank you for the $5, Trigonaut. And unironically, I mean, that's basically the point that we're at right now. And the level of pettiness. You know, it's funny. I've been thinking this in the back of my head for a while, and I guarantee you it's coming at some point. How long until eventually they just try to indict and arrest a political opponent over speeding tickets, right? Like, I guarantee you this is coming, and it's really funny because with the Andrew Tate stuff over in Romania, I've been thinking in the back of my head, you know, I know for a fact he sped a lot, right? Obviously. How long until they get him for that? Because technically, I know in America, right, if you are going, for instance, 30 miles per hour, this is the way it is in Florida, right? 30 miles per hour over the speed limit, which, let's be real, not me, obviously, but a lot of people have done, you can actually, that's a felony. Right, so I virtually guarantee you, I don't know if it's going to happen to Trump because he hasn't driven for many years, but I guarantee you at some point, they're going to get someone politically in this country for speeding and charge it as a felony, because you technically can. And that is certainly coming. Thank you for the $5, though. I appreciate it very much. Here we go. Christopher for $5 says, a while ago, I wanted Elon Musk to buy YouTube as well, but I know the left will selectively enforce monopoly laws on him. Sorry, my throat is itchy all of a sudden for no reason. Thank you for the $5, Christopher. And this is very true. They probably would do that. But, you know, it's funny. It's not funny, but you know what I mean. Is that Instagram and Instagram merged with Facebook years ago. Okay, so what is that? That's not monopolization. YouTube itself merged with Google. Right? People forget that Google did not invent YouTube. I believe Google bought out YouTube, right? So, but you are right. They will obviously selectively enforce it, and I virtually guarantee you, if he tried to do that, they would say that is monopolization. They'd use antitrust. 100%. And it's a great point. Thank you for the $5, though. Christopher, dollar for dollar, sends a member chat for 6 months saying, hey, Vince, what up? What are your thoughts on gamer girls? That's kind of a Fed posty question, but he says, what are your thoughts on gamer girls? Me personally, it's kind of like having a girlfriend who plays football with you. It's a thing for the guys. Also, did you watch the Tate jail stream? I didn't watch it. I tuned in for 2 seconds and they were asleep, and I was like, okay, whatever. But let me know if it was interesting at all. But what are my thoughts on gamer girls? I agree with your take on that completely. I've said this before, right? I understand how guys think that whole gimmick is hot because, yeah, when a girl, does something that is supposed to be a guy thing, like she's in front of a sports car or playing video games or sports or whatever it is, it's like, oh, I understand the attractiveness there, but I think that's exactly it, right? It's just a fetish at the end of the day. Ultimately, any clear-minded, sober, rational guy will agree that it is weird for girls to do guy things, for females to do male things, right? I'm not saying if you're a girl and playing video games, oh my gosh, blah, 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 how dare you? I'm not saying that, but I think dollar for dollar, and I understand what we're talking about. It's the girls who kind of use it for the purpose of like sex appeal, right? They make it into a thing. Look, I have video game, and, or they post in front of the car with virtually no clothes on, right? It's kind of a fetish thing, right? So, and guys are like, oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. And like I said, I kind of understand how they think it's cool. I personally, I'm not really attracted to it, but I understand it. But yeah, at the end of the day, I don't know if you want a girlfriend like that. I want my girlfriend to be feminine and generally speaking like feminine things. And it's not that she can't take an interest in something that's quote unquote more manly, but to make it your whole personality and kind of almost into this sexual thing, I just think it's kind of backwards, right? So I agree. I feel like sports you want to leave to the boys, generally speaking. Red Eagle Politics is in chat. What's up, Red Eagle? Who says woman playing video games isn't attractive. It's not a feminine activity. Exactly. So Red Eagle gets this. Dollar for dollar gets this, and this is true. Again, guys, if you do want to super chat tonight to support the show, it's greatly appreciated, and it just certainly helps us make up from last week's lost streams, which, by the way, those of you guys who did watch us on Rumble, though, I do definitely appreciate it. But anyways, getting into the news tonight, ladies and gentlemen, enough about me. Let's get into the news. We first got to talk about this Trump indictment situation. And so, long story short, to sum up all the legal nonsense here, what has happened is that, as I'm sure you're familiar with, there's currently a grand jury investigation going on surrounding Trump in Georgia, where they're trying to find a way to charge him over the whole phone calls. And, you know, people claim he was trying to steal the Georgia election, even though clearly, if you read what he said in context, that's obviously not the case. But as you know, there's a whole grand jury going on, and we all fully basically expect, right, that there's going to be an indictment handed down. However, as you may be familiar with, in order to hand down an indictment, in order to press charges in this situation, a grand jury has to get together and vote to go forward, vote to say, yes, we will press charges in this situation. The grand jury in Georgia has not voted yet. However, today on, I think the Georgia, I'm not sure which website it is, the courthouse records, whatever, it was leaked, posted, quote unquote, accidentally, that they've already posted an indictment against Donald Trump. And you see here, the charges, violation of the Georgia RICO Act, right? Solicitation of violation of oath, conspiracy to impersonate a public officer. You see here, there are countless felonies, okay? I think in total 31 felonies that they're charging with, and this is basically an indictment paper, okay? The reason that is significant is that, like I said again, they haven't even charged. Okay, the grand jury has not voted yet to charge with anything, and yet the DA in this situation is already writing up indictments and has already accidentally, quote unquote, published the indictment. Now, the state of Georgia has now taken this off the website and is saying it was a fake document, it was an accident, it was not real, to which I say, how did that happen? How did a fake indictment on Trump accidentally get on the website? That means they already had it written. They already have basically decided they know what's going to happen, but the grand jury hasn't even voted on it, right? And I don't think that should be surprising to a whole lot of people. We have already understood that this case is very corrupt, that all of the political witch hunts against Trump are very corrupt, but that does tell you a lot. It certainly does tell you a lot that they already have the indictment ready to go and accidentally published it before the grand jury has even voted, right? So it does certainly dispel, I mean, like I said, I don't think any viewer of this channel has ever believed it, but it does certainly dispel any myth narrative that people like Ed and Brian Krasenstein on Twitter will spread, that Trump is getting a 100% fair trial and everyone needs to just relax and let the justice system do its place, do its work, right? To which I say, if the justice system is the city of Manhattan, if the justice system is the courts in Washington, D.C., if the justice system, even in a Republican, quote unquote, state like Georgia, is in this situation where they're already indicting before a grand jury has even voted to charge, and accidentally, the whole thing's very corrupt, then there is no faith to be had in that justice system, right? And that's part of why I also say people always kind of have been running with the idea that there's absolutely no way that Trump gets convicted in any of these cases because he's Teflon Don. And I think a lot of us have this idea that it's all kind of for show and you will not see any convictions, which, again, if it's a fair trial, of course, that won't happen. But this is very much my concern, is that if, first of all, where these cases are happening, but also you see how they're handling this, right? You see what's going on. Who's to say that Trump gets a fair trial? I'm actually very confident, at least in the case in Washington, D.C., that jury there will 100%, in my opinion, this is my prediction, will 100% vote to convict Trump. Now, maybe it goes to the Supreme Court and maybe gets tossed out, but I 100% think you're going to see a conviction there. New York, that case is very weak. Even a lot of liberal media are saying there's not a lot there, but still, it's New York. You don't know what's going to happen there. And then even here, even in Atlanta, Georgia, right, which you would think because there's Republican oversight, it's going to be so clean. But look at this case right here. The governor has not stepped in. The attorney general in that state, the secretary of state, the Republican-led state government of Georgia has not stepped in any way to shut down in this investigation, which I think, especially after seeing this case, seeing this, the corruption of this handling here, they already had an indictment written and published, accidentally published, before the grand jury even voted, right? That should be inconclusive reason to toss out this case and say, we're shutting down this case, we're shutting down this investigation, the whole thing is totally corrupt and it's been mishandled, we have prosecutorial misconduct. But that's not going to happen. So even in the state of Georgia, you can't trust Republican leadership to step in here and do the right thing, because that's what they should do. They should be defunding this investigation. They should be shutting down this investigation. But obviously, as you could expect, it's not going to happen. So will Donald Trump get a fair trial? Frankly, who knows at this point? It is what it is. Now, I think it does confirm, and this is not surprising to anyone, that the grand jury virtually guaranteed they probably will indict, and I think you're going to see a fourth indictment of Trump, and that's not surprising. And it is what it is. Although I will, one more thing I will point out on this front is all these trials are basically scheduled for next year. Okay. So one trial takes him away from the campaign trail for a few weeks. It is what it is. It's obviously not a good thing, but one could argue one court case actually kind of is a better campaign tactic in a way, because the whole nation will be having to pay attention to Trump that whole time. But notice, they got 4 different court cases at this time. Let's say each case takes 1 to 2 weeks. You could cut out basically the entire general election cycle for Trump, where he literally cannot touch the campaign trail at all because you got him wrapped up in legal cases. And even if it's a little bit less than that, virtually guarantee you, like I said, at least DC is going to convict, and then it's going to have to go to appeals. So, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? It'll be interesting to see at this point. It's all corrupt. It's a kangaroo court, but, it is what it is. It is what it is. I mean, frankly, none of this stuff surprises me at this point, but just thought we'd bring it up and have to point it out there, okay? John A. says Georgia has decayed over time. Also, the Georgia GOP leadership is a bit unipartyist, in my opinion. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny, like Florida in many ways is the new Georgia, because Georgia for many years was known as this conservative right-wing bastion, right? To a lot of people, at least, I mean, that was even the stereotype. You look at it culturally back in the day. But, now it's totally flipped. And Florida has always been the lukewarm, soft red kind of Republican swing state. And I think those reputations have certainly flipped. So this is true. This is true. But yeah, just wanted to share that news on the Trump indictment front. Let's move on here to talk about a story that is kind of last week's news, but we were obviously banned last week, and so a lot of you guys have not seen our coverage of this. And I did want to bring it up, which is this whole controversy over the buoys at the border in Texas. So if you're totally unfamiliar with the situation, Greg Abbott and the Texas state government have set up at the Rio Grande River. They set up these buoys that are basically, as you can see here, right, supposed to block the river. Because I'm sure, as you're familiar, a lot of these illegals, as Donald Trump called them, the bad hombres, right, a lot of them just walk over the Rio Grande River or swim or whatever it is. And so they put up these buoys to basically try to deter people from going, right, to kind of block the river. Obviously, of course, there is nothing wrong with that. It's 100% obviously a good thing to do. We should build buoys. We should build walls. Heck, I think we should build a dam. Let's just build like a 20-feet dam that just makes the Rio Grande River impenetrable, frankly. But, as you could imagine, because the Biden administration openly wants illegal immigration to come into this country, they've actually sued. Okay, so they've sued the state of Texas basically saying that you are not in the authority, right? You're not in the constitutional authority to build these barriers because it's the federal government's job to secure the border. Of course, to which I say, right, I think that if the federal government is delinquent in its job of securing our border, in fact, I would go further than delinquent. I think they're actively encouraging an open border. Then obviously, of course, I think it fully falls within the authority of a state government to step up and secure their own border. And I've been saying since Biden took office, I've been saying Texas, Arizona, all these red states on the border, secure your border, do your own deportations. Frankly, who cares? Who's going to stop you, right? So obviously, you know, that's we know this at this point. But the controversy as of last week are the fact that this whole narrative they're spreading that the buoys are killing people. Okay, and what they're bringing up here, if you look very carefully, let me try to zoom in so you can see, okay? This is the new line about the buoys, because I think they took a look, and even a lot of independent and moderate voters were like, what's the problem with a buoy at the border? I mean, it's a natural barrier. Like, who cares? It's the border. You're not supposed to cross the border. But they're bringing this new narrative to the table that... You see these circles right here? Look at where my mouse... Oh, you can't even see my mouse on the screen. Can you see my mouse? No, you can't. Okay, never mind. Look in between the little orange things, right? You see that little piece of metal in between? Now, I look at that, and it looks to me like it's just the way the buoy's built, right? These little circles that hold them together. But the liberals took pictures of those and are now saying that there's spikes. There's spikes on the buoys that are meant to kill people and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then they're spreading this narrative now that 2 migrants were found dead, okay? They're found dead and caught in the buoys, okay? So what the liberals are now running with, what they're saying, and what Biden is saying, is that these buoys that the state of Texas has built have killed migrants because migrants were found caught dead in the buoys. Now, of course, there's many different problems with that. But first and foremost, obviously, is the issue of, well, you can't really prove that, okay? There's actually no proof of that, actually, I should say, whatsoever. Because migrants could have died from the buoys. And look, maybe that is possible. But it seems to me actually more likely that you don't know. They could have just drowned. It's not safe to cross the Rio Grande River. A lot of them come over already exhausted. It's obviously also possible that the migrants simply drowned or died in the river and ended up caught in the buoys, because if they float over the river, their bodies get stuck in the buoys. So that's one thing I would point out. But even on the front of, let's say hypothetically it is true that the migrants died because they were impaled by the buoys, to which I would say this, okay? Obviously that is unfortunate. Obviously that is tragic. Obviously it's not a good thing that anyone dies, okay? You don't want to see that. However, I think we should have an honest conversation about that at the same time, which is to say this, okay? You know, it's unfortunate when anyone dies. It is. But if someone dies because they were drunk driving and they wrapped their car around a tree, what is your kind of logical response to that? Yes, it's tragic. Yes, it's bad. Yes, he had a family. Yes, we should mourn the death, and I'm not encouraging death or endorsing death, obviously. But at the same time, there's kind of a degree to which you kind of point out the matter of personal responsibility, do you not? Do you not look at it and say, well, you know, it's very tragic. It shouldn't happen. I wish it didn't happen. But I also wish the person wasn't drunk driving in the first place, so that way he didn't wrap his car around the tree like that. You know what I mean? If someone, you know, it does just, what's another stupid thing you can do? I don't know. If someone's like jumping off a cliff, right? Or they're like hip hop, they're hop skipping in between a cliff and they fall off the cliff and die. Yes, that's tragic. Obviously, like, that's a horrible thing. But what are you really supposed to say in response to that? Do you ban people? Do you just here's the logical equivalent, right? Do you demolish the entire cliff if that happens because someone fell off the cliff because they were being stupid? Do you abolish all cars and roads? Do you ban all cars because someone was stupid with a car? Of course not. To which I say the exact same thing here. Look, obviously it's tragic that, you know, any migrants die crossing the border, but at the same time, it's also a tragic thing that people illegally cross the border, right? And that's part of the thing. You see these buoys, you know for a fact that you are not supposed to cross the border, and then you die in the dangerous and illegal process of crossing the border. Again, is that tragic? Yes. Am I celebrating that? Of course not. But the liberal argument here is that, oh, people have died at the border, so we should abolish the border. Well, heck, why not build a bridge? We need to let them all in, because people on the very dangerous journey that is illegal and they should not be having, the buoys are there because you should not illegally immigrate into the country. You should not invade, which is the right word, the country. What do you want us to do about it? Right? What is everyone else in the world supposed to do about it? You know? It's sad, it's tragic, I get it. But you look at me and try to guilt trip me upon seeing that into saying, okay, I think we should get rid of those buoys now. Why? Right? Why is that the case? You know, if someone tries to climb a fence of it's the same thing. If someone tries to climb a fence of barbed wire into a government, let's say someone tries to cross into Area 51 and they try to climb the barbed wire and they impale themselves on the barbed wire. Yes, it's tragic. It's tragic that they died. It's also tragic that they were being stupid. What do you want the world to do about it? Okay? So, you know, I just wanted to bring up a discussion of that, because we're going to get a lot of guilt tripping over the next few weeks about this entire situation. Oh my gosh, you know, the Texas buoys and how dare they build those? Okay, well, again, guys, why are they there? They're there because you should not cross the border. You should not cross the border illegally. They are meant to be a deterrent, okay? But if you walk right into the deterrent and the deterrent does its job of deterring, what are we supposed to do? Remove the deterrent? Remove the border that it protects? It's so silly. I mean, frankly, it's a typical kind of liberal argument, right? Of, oh, well, look, this bad thing happens, so just abolish it, get rid of it. It's just so silly. It's just so silly. The point is, you should not invade the country, okay? You know the number one way to not and tragically end up dead or injured in a buoy on the southern border is you don't cross the southern border. Okay, there's a reason why it's there. It is what it is. It is what it is. Like with Joe Biden, if someone crossed the White House fence, and obviously what happens when you cross the White House fence, right? You hop over the fence. What happens to you? If that happens, right? Or what are we going to do? Go say, okay, abolish the White House fence. No, the fence is clearly there to protect people and protect the White House. If you violate the sanctity of that deterrence, then what happens to you? I mean, we all know what happens to you. So, you know, this is of course the case. So, and yeah, exactly, Lizel. They obviously don't even look that sharp. I mean, this is very true. Anyways, guys, let's get caught up now on our super chats here. Mutant Master Race says, have you heard that Brandon Herrera is running for Congress in Texas District 23? He also has a big focus in cracking down on immigration. Thank you for the $5, Mutant Master Race. I didn't hear that he was running for Congress, but shout out to him. I mean, I'm not super familiar with him, but from everything I've heard about him, he seems pretty cool. So, you know, I'm not going to formally endorse him because I don't know enough about him. But from everything I've heard, you know, that we love to hear it, I suppose. Thank you for the $5, Mutant Master Race. I appreciate it very much. And everyone in the chat saying that he's great. So, I mean, there you go. There you go. Then, you know, shout out Brandon Herrera and good luck in Congress, certainly. So, there you go, ladies. Yeah, let's go, Brandon. Let's go, Brandon. Very real. Very real. So, all right, guys, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, again, if you do want to super chat to support the show, it is greatly appreciated. But let us move on now in our stories. It is 8:36 p.m. We are doing decently here on time. Let's move on a little bit to some Vivek Ramaswamy news, ladies and gentlemen. So, I'm sure everyone at this point is familiar with Vivek. I think now, here's my take on him, is that his honeymoon phase is over. Right? He had a honeymoon phase when everyone was first introduced to him, and really no one had anything bad to say about him because it was very hard to find anything bad to say about him, right? But now that he is becoming a very serious player in this race, now that he is coming close to catching DeSantis in the polls, I think here's where it's going to start to get a little more challenging for Vivek in the sense that people are now going to start asking him real questions from the right wing. So far, what has that been? Oh, Vivek, you want mothers to be with their children? You're sexist for that, Vivek. Vivek, you want to raise the voting age? You know, you're too extreme and you're anti-democracy. All this general casual nonsense. But now I think you're going to get to the point where the other right-wingers who maybe support other candidates, like myself, right? I support Trump, are now going to start hitting him with the hard questions. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how he responds. Well, he actually got the chance to respond earlier last week when he went on the Candace Owens show and was kind of grilled a little bit for some of his past stances, for some discussion of what is your actual genuine opinion on the 2020 election, all this different stuff. And as you'll see here on your right, we're going to react to the little debate interview here in a second. On your right, we have DC Drano, and DC Drano is a very big Trump influencer and kind of grills Vivek a little bit on these questions of, look what was in your past books. What do you believe happened in 2020? All of that stuff. And let's get into the reaction here. Let's check it out and give you our thoughts. Here it is. Here is Vivek versus DC Drano with Candace Owens moderating. Check it out.
Well, Vivek, what's happened necessarily now that people are looking at the polls and suddenly we're seeing Ramaswamy next to DeSantis, who they thought was going to be way up with Donald Trump. These people are going, who is this guy? Who is Vivek? Where did he come from? And people are starting to hone in and wonder, ask some questions about you. And they're going through your book now. They're going through every statement you've ever made in the past. It's necessary. You're kind of going through this historical autopsy of sorts. Mm-hmm. And one area that I think people had a lot of questions was regarding January 6th. There were some people that felt that you flip-flopped on your messaging when January 6th took place versus what you could be saying now. Rogan, you were one of the people that felt this way. You said the messaging was switched. So I'll just let you ask him directly of what you felt he said and how you think his message has changed.
Yeah. So, I also was, like many, surprised at Vivek's rise. And I saw at the Turning Point conference, people were like cheering for him. And I'm like, who even is this guy? I've never seen a critical interview. And so I started to dig because, as people are pretty well aware, I'm a Trump supporter, have been since, 2016. And, the first thing that came across my mind is, why is this guy running against Trump as Trump is being indicted? And then I started to dig a little deeper on Twitter, and I came across some passages from your book. And I don't know which book it is. It's one of the two, but it talks about January 6th, and it says, it was a dark day for democracy. The loser of the last election refused to concede the race, claimed the election was stolen, raised hundreds of millions of dollars from loyal supporters, and is considering running for executive office. I'm referring, of course, to Donald Trump. Do you think that the 2020 election was fair? Do you think that Joe Biden got the most votes in American history, or do you think 2020 was rigged?
Which is, we'll play the response, but which is, it's a grilling question, and I'm glad people are asking him this because if you view him as a serious candidate, which I kind of do and kind of don't, like my take has been, I think he's good for the Overton window. He's spreading some good ideas. I'm certainly not against him by any means, but that's kind of the way I see him, right? But if you're going to view him as a serious candidate, you do need to vet him very much more closely. And so this is very good. But anyways, let's play Vivek's response.
So I'll answer that. I think 2020 was rigged specifically by big tech. But I just want to say something at the outset, because this is the first time we're meeting, is that I've actually been a longtime fan and of your tweets particularly. And I understand that I did a little bit come out of nowhere, right? I was in the business world. I had no public footprint at all until 2020. And then really 2021 when I stepped down from my job as a CEO. So I invite the scrutiny. Some of it's bad faith, but then I take someone like you, and I understand your heart is actually in this for the country as opposed to some of the other trolls. And so that's why I'm engaging with this directly. So let me be really clear about something. I've written 3 books in the last 18 months. That passage has now been floating around Twitter. I'd encourage you to read the book, or at least even the chapter that came from. Those lines were tongue-in-cheek, in part because those were the opening words of the chapter. It was a dark day for democracy. The winner refused to concede the election, raised hundreds of millions of dollars. Those exact words. I'm referring to, of course, Stacey Abrams. That was literally the opening paragraph of that chapter. And it turned out that those words were literally borrowed from a description of somebody else criticizing Donald Trump that I then cut and pasted. So,
okay, so in short, that was out of context, which does happen. I'm sure there's a lot of bad faith stuff. Okay, fine. But now it gets a little more challenging because it's like, what do you actually think about 2020 and what are your opinions? And so that's what kind of happens next here.
Look, I have detailed messaging on all of this, but you read that chapter and you read that book, it's easy for someone to airlift something out of Nation of Victims without reading the whole book. It was literally a satirical chapter that started with those words that someone had used against Donald Trump with Stacey Abrams as the punchline. And here's the thing about the books I've written. I wasn't writing them with any intention of running for president, right? And so otherwise you'd read them and can this be misquoted? No, these are, if I may say so myself, I would say intellectual books. These are not candidate books, okay? These are books that were written in part of a career, 3 books in 20 months. Candace, and probably you, I don't know if you've written books as well, understand what it takes to write one. I've written 3 and they're not candidate books, are deeply introspective books. So much so that actually even some of the things that I said in Woke Inc., I've moved a little bit from today. What did I say in that book and I stand by it today? 2 things that I think are really important points. The 2020 election was stolen principally by big tech. The Google search algorithms that suppressed actual stories that you could have read on Donald Trump. Hunter Biden laptop story, suppressed on the eve of an election. There's definitive data showing that that actually would have changed the outcome of the election. I personally find that data, just like in terms of the raw numbers, even stronger than the data that's yet been presented on ballot fraud, though I think both existed.
So, that's a little bit of a cop-out answer. I mean, let's be real, it is. Now, what I will say in fairness, because I know some Trump people, like, immediately, that's it. He's over for him, right? I will say in fairness that I think it is a genuinely challenging topic for a Republican candidate to navigate. Because, me personally, what is my personal belief is obviously big tech played a factor, but I think it really has more so to do what happened in 2020 with a couple different things. First of all, I think the changes to the voting system were intentionally designed both by natural and allegedly, according to some, right, unnatural means to put the turnout game impossibly in favor of Democrats, right? And that was always the plan with this mail-in voting and ballot harvesting and all that stuff. So that's number one. I think that's the first thing that happened. The second thing is that in the same sense, we always talk about the FBI with a laptop, but who's to say it doesn't go further than that? I mean, it is a known fact that the CIA interferes in elections and rigs elections all around the world throughout history. And that's a known, indisputable fact. And of course, understanding that the administrative state, that the deep state, the bureaucracy, all of our agencies did not like Trump as president, I would go to speculate. I think something went on there too. So that's my take, just to be clear. So, before someone says, Vince, you don't believe that the election was... No, of course I do. Of course I do. At the same time, though, I think that, it's a hard issue, and I'm like, not to play devil's advocate, not to defend the cop-out answer, but it is a genuinely challenging topic that every Republican candidate, Trump included, has to navigate. Right? Even Trump has pivoted a little bit on this to say, okay, look, it did happen, but what we got to do going forward, and I think this is the most important thing, what we got to do going forward is, first of all, win the next election and use all means that are legal to win the next election. And so if they're going to build a political machine, we need to build a political machine, right? And then after that, once we've won the next election, reform the voting system so that way we can get rid of all this stuff, okay? But I think that, to me, is the most important thing is, A, does a Republican candidate understand that we are stuck in the system and we got to play their game and beat them at their game? That's what's important to me. And then secondly, once the Republican candidate is in office, are they going to reform the voting system back to what it should be? That, to me, is more relevant than whether or not a Republican candidate goes out there openly and directly says, yes, the election was stolen, okay? Now, that might be a hot take with some people, and I understand why people will say it's a cop-out answer, and it is. But You know, that's just kind of how I feel about it. So to me, it's like, is it kind of weak by Vivek? Is it a little bit, you know, cop out? Yes. At the same time, to me, it's not personally the biggest deal ever. Okay, but that's just my take. You guys can let me know your takes, but let's keep playing this.
I've been very clear about where I stand on ballot fraud. Single day voting, election day as holiday, has to be paper ballots. And by the way, government issued ID matching the voter file. But I think what's more important to understand as well, and I talk about this in this book, is 2016 was actually even the other election that was stolen from Donald Trump, the election that he supposedly won, where he wasn't allowed to govern for those 4 years. And so the only thing I would say is there will be a lot of things that you and I may have slightly different points of view on. I think this will exist. But all I'll ask is, I know you're an intellectual as well. You're a guy who cares about the country. Read the books, not some sort of screenshot from Twitter of a purposefully airlifted passage. And about January 6th, what Candace mentioned, and I saw this in one of your tweets too, and I just want to address this, Rogan, just so you're aware. Somebody floated a passage where I said what Trump did that day was reprehensible on January 6th. I said this shortly thereafter. And again, that's another airlift. Read what it was. That wasn't a tweet from me. That was a reply to somebody else's tweet in response to a Wall Street Journal piece that I wrote 2 days after January 6th, or in the days after January 6th. I wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal that said that censorship, systematic censorship in this country, was the cause of January 6th. And in particular, it was government using tech companies to silence speech. And I said that that would be a friendly parley compared to what's to come. Somebody then asked me, do you excuse what Donald Trump did on that day? And I wanted to be clear, and it's something I'm saying today too, is that no, I would not have handled January 6th in the same way as Donald Trump. And that's a fact. And maybe you and I can disagree on that. I said it then, I stand by it today. But just like I said in the days after January 6th, which caused multiple advisors to my company to resign, which caused me to face great personal cost in the seat that I was in as a biotech CEO, that's the same thing I'm saying today. And so that's a long way of saying we may still have our disagreements, but I'd love to have those disagreements with the full context of what I've said rather than airlifting passages. I'm not accusing you of doing that, but that's what I've seen circulating a lot. And let's have real disagreements instead of fake ones. That's all I would say.
So Vivek, I'm just going to jump in here because I did not know, obviously, what you were going to say as an answer to that, and guilty as charged.
So I think a lot of people have this question about his past, okay? And, you know, if you go back and look at his past record, a lot of it is out of context. There are a few things here and there you could say, you know, past tweets of his where it's, what's up with that? Although what I will say is that you go back and look, besides maybe the George Soros stuff that kind of, you know, some question marks, I don't know if there's anything at least he's got out and said that is immediately completely disqualifying. Like, obviously people have changes of heart, whatever, it is what it is. But it is a legitimate question, you know, because obviously he is such a smooth talker that I think a lot of us are looking at it like, okay, but it's almost like he's too good of a talker. Not saying he is. He might just be a very articulate guy. It happens. But so I think there's an aspect of that to which people are a little bit like, you know, does he really believe the things you're saying? So, you know, I'm not saying that he can't be trusted. I'm just saying I think it's useful to cross-examine him and come to your own judgments. Like I said, my biggest thing with him is that I don't plan to vote for him. So whether or not he's really going to follow through as president, that doesn't matter to me because I don't think he's going to be president. But if he's spreading good ideas in the party and kind of pushing the needle of conversation in the party, frankly, who cares if he's deep down a fraud or not, right? Because I think that if someone, especially when it comes to messaging, if someone is spreading a message and putting good ideas in people's heads, then if he himself is personally disingenuous when he's doing it, but in the net end, it's a good thing, it is what it is, right? It's like, it's good for the party overall. But I do think, yeah, if you're going to take him seriously as a candidate, if you do plan to vote for him, then it is an open question of whether or not he's going to follow through or he is who he says he is. And, you know, so there's definitely a question to be asked.
When I saw the things being passed around, I actually thought maybe he actually did say this, and I will completely own the fact that I did not read it, and I cannot defend, I cannot further offend it because obviously what you're saying in defense makes sense that it was airlifted. Rogan, did you actually read the full chapter either, or did you also see what was circulating? Okay, so what's funny about that as a Trump supporter?
It's not my main point, right? Yeah. So let me preface by saying I respect Vivek for coming on and having this discussion, knowing that I'm a very vocal critic. My main point is that Vivek does not believe there was actual election fraud with the ballots, that he can watch something like 2,000 Mules. Did you see 2,000 Mules, Vivek?
I've seen part of it, I have to admit. I did not finish it, but
I
did
highly
see
recommend you go watch it, because it's probably one of the most important documentaries in recent history that showed massive systemic election fraud across this country. And to me, as a vocal supporter and just a voice for the MAGA base, I will say, if you do not believe that there was election fraud beyond what big tech suppressed, that they are not muling around hundreds of thousands, if not millions of ballots, that if at 3 a.m. in the Detroit TCF arena, they didn't drop off hundreds of thousands of ballots on video, that the Gateway Pundit has exposed, that they were banned from Twitter, that there was no Republican supervisors, that we saw vote spikes in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania overnight in the dead of night, that they shut down Georgia for a water pipe break, and then suddenly they pull out ballots out of the under the table and start counting. If you don't think that there's election fraud, in my opinion, that is disqualifying for anyone running in the GOP, because this is not politics as normal.
Let me just say one thing to that about my view.
Is aggressive. They are
I want to
coming
just
after
jump
us.
in here. I just want to jump in here. And so first and foremost, I will say that I believe that there was election fraud. And I've made that statement over and over again.
I do too,
I've
example,
tweeted that. I mean, by the way, mail-in ballot fraud, 100% agree with Rogan on this point. I do want to say, let's not bifurcate here, because it is relevant to say that there are quotations being passed around that are out of context. So I do want to own that and say to Vivek, thank you for explaining that. It is relevant that you were using something that was pertaining to Stacey Abrams. To move on the discussion to talk about mail-in ballots is actually really important as well. So first off, Rogan, to ask you this question, and only because I only found this out.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
Can I say one thing quickly to clarify my view here? I, based on everything I've seen, believe there was absolutely ballot fraud. Rogan, here's one of the things I'll say is we all have our areas of expertise. Until I decided to enter the political arena, as opposed to criticizing stakeholder capitalism and the World Economic Forum agenda and central bank digital currencies and ESG, where my focus has been, this has not been an area where I've dived as deep. So what I will say is, yes, there's been ballot fraud. What I see that is damningly convincing, driven by data, is that absolutely, I have seen enough data to know that the 2020 outcome of the election would have been different if the Hunter Biden laptop story had not been suppressed. If Google had not made an illegal campaign contribution of the largest scale in human history to the Biden campaign by suppressing and changing the way search algorithms works. So there, I'm actually definitively convinced that it changed the outcome of the election. I haven't said that it didn't in the case of the ballot fraud. I just said truthfully, and it's a fact now, and I'm very open to data to convince me of it. I haven't seen data of that scale on the election changing outcome, and that's what I've said, and I'm open about that. But I just want to be clear always where my views are and where they aren't. And so that's, I think, a fair discussion for us to have.
Which is fair. I mean, I've sat down with people and they've wanted me to say something. And I'm like, to be honest, I don't know that confidently myself yet. So I don't want to say something because everybody else is saying it. But Rogan, you've done a great job of sharing the Gateway Pundit stuff over the last couple of days. Vivek, I really would recommend that you really dive into it because you are correct. Gateway Pundit did fantastic work. They were banned from Twitter. And it is something that I feel in my heart and my soul to be true, that there was massive mail-in ballot fraud. All right, guys, if you liked this video, you are definitely going to like the...
All right, folks. Well, there you, in essence, have it. There's the Vivek. Someone says his name is Vivek. Why do they keep changing this? First, I was calling him Vivek, and they're like, it's not Vivek, it's Vivek. Now it's Vivek. What is he changing his name? Because this is the first interview I've heard him called Vivek. It's been Vivek the whole time. What is Vivek now? You know, that's more disqualifying than anything in this interview. Why does he keep changing the way he pronounces his name? Frankly. Okay, so it's Vivek. Is that what it is? That's not how it's pronounced in English. It's spelled Vivek. Okay? It's spelled... No. Listen, you know what? Frankly, I don't know the right way to pronounce it. But what I will say is that the way his name is spelled in English is Vivek. There's no... Where's the ache? It's not ache, it's Vivek. Okay? So, you know... Unless he comes out and personally clarifies how the name is, I'm going to say it Vivek. It's the American way to say it. It's the English way to say it, okay? It's called assimilation, guys. No, but like, seriously. What's the right way to say his name? Okay, anyways, that's all besides the point. All right, conclusion on that is that, well, like I once again said, because I'm not voting for him, I think stuff like this is not the most significant to me, okay? It kind of it is what it is, frankly. what I think the biggest red flags for me with Vivek, it's even this issue itself to me, I don't think is the biggest thing that some people may make it out to be. Again, not saying that he's not copping out of the answer, because of course he is. But again, like I will reiterate, two things. I think, first of all, it's a challenging issue to navigate politically, and every Republican candidate's trying to figure out how to do it. It's like, would I have not voted for Blake Masters just because Blake Masters tried to navigate it in the same way in Arizona? Like, of course not, right? So that's not the biggest deal to me in itself. I think the fact that he, A, says, you know, we need to use the system to our advantage, and then B, we need to fix the system once we have the power. To me, I don't know, on that issue, that's kind of frankly enough. I would say I more so have way more concern with him over an issue like immigration, right? Because he has, we'll probably talk about it on tomorrow night's show or whatever, but he has a stance on the legal immigration system that I strongly disagree with. But I don't know. You guys can let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. I mean, I understand the distrust from a lot of people. I certainly do. I get where it comes from. And, you know, I mean, I will say myself, I wouldn't myself say that I trust the guy. I wouldn't say I distrust the guy either. It's just a matter of, well, yeah, he is kind of an unknown. And, you know, I genuinely do think if you're considering actually voting for him, then it is necessary for you to really take a deep dive and look, you know, look carefully and discern kind of in your, you know, it's always hard to tell, but discern on the inside. Do you really trust the guy? Do you fully do it? You know, my stance though, and to people who think we should totally reject everything he says, I've always maintained the stance that I think that the stuff he says and the way he articulates it is good for the Overton window. I think there's a lot of ideas he has that are good. Now, there are some ideas he has that I think are insufficient. They're kind of just toe the rest of the neocon party line of the GOP, i.e. the immigration stance. But, you know, there's nothing he says that's openly liberal, necessarily pushing the Overton window to the left. But I think on these certain issues that he's really solid on, the fact that he's spreading these ideas to the right, you know, I hope it makes it into the Trump campaign. I hope it makes it into the Trump White House, you know, blah, blah, blah. That's the way I see him. So on the final verdict of, does Vince really trust Vivek Ramaswamy? The answer is, I don't trust him, but I don't distrust him either. I'm fairly neutral on this question of whether or not he is personally sincere. You know what I mean? But for me, the big thing is the fact that he is kind of being a visionary and putting, at least I should say, mostly good ideas. Again, there's some I disagree with, but mostly good ideas into the Overton window. I think that is overall good for the party, good for the movement, and good in the long run. Anyways, there's my take, though. I'd like to know some of your guys' thoughts, though, because for once, this is an issue I'm really not super opinionated on. You know, there's in some ways I don't always know how to feel. So I just look at him and say, well, there's an articulate guy that's putting some good stuff into the Overton window, and you know, I accept it and I view it as a net positive. But I'm curious to know your guys' thoughts. So, you know, with that said, why don't we read some of your guys' thoughts? Let's get caught up here on our super chats. Dollar for Dollar says, when I get to Liberty, I'm voting for Hung Cow, and that's for $2. Thank you very much, Dollar for Dollar, and this is true. Hung Cow, okay? We need Hung Cow for president, all right? Hung Cow, all right? Could you imagine that? Could you imagine Hung Cow for president? No, but it's true, yeah. Everyone in Virginia, be sure to vote for Hung Cow for U.S. Senate, okay? For no other reason. I mean, he's a solid guy, but if you're wondering why, his name is Hung Cow, okay? How can you not vote for a guy named Hung Cow? That's the coolest name ever. So be sure to go vote for Hung Cow. Sheeny Beanie for $2 says, Stacey Abrams hasn't called in lately. Yeah, this is true. I think we finally drove away Stacey Abrams. Okay, so thank you for the $2. I appreciate it. Sheeny Beanie sends a member chat saying, I appreciate Vivek's forehead. This is so true. This is so true. Okay. His forehead will truly run the country. Very real. But anyways, let's take a look. DeSantis went through the same issue, Vince. Yeah, changing the way he pronounces his name. Vivek. Even if that's the way you pronounce his name in Hindu or Hindi, Indian, whatever. At the very least, he already, and by the way, I don't know how to really pronounce it, but I think he already has a name that's confusing the people why not at least pronounce it for the campaign in the phonetic way to do it, which is Vivek. Okay, it's literally Vivek. That's the way it's spelled, Vivek. Okay. And frankly, if you're going to be running, I'm not saying he's doing this because I don't know. I'm just saying to people saying you're saying his name wrong or whatever. If you're going to run as a Republican, as a conservative, and you're mad that I pronounce your way, the way your name is phonetically pronounced in English, then, I mean, what do you want me to do about that, buddy? It's pronounced Vivek. That's the way it's literally the English letters say, at least the American accent, right? Says Vivek. I mean, my legal name is Vince, but if I had the Vietnamese version of Vince, which some of my family does, which is Vin, right? Is Vin. And I got mad because people call me Vince or Vinny or Vincent because that's the English translation of it. You know, if I were running for president as a conservative and I went full SJW about you're pronouncing my name wrong, why you don't know how to spell Vin Down Wing Trend, right? You know, like how can you? It's America. It's America. It's a Western English speaking country. So sorry for pronouncing the name the way it's pronounced in Western English. So I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna say Vivek. I'm gonna say Vivek. Okay, you guys already got me to change. First, I was saying Vivek. Okay, which I will concede probably is wrong because the English letters do say Vivek. Okay, but I'm not gonna say Vivek. Okay. The letters don't say Vivek. Why should I say Vivek? He's running as a Republican. Okay, like get over it. It's like the Kamala whole thing. You know, it's we're not doing this, guys. We're not doing this. Okay, you can call me xenophobic all you want. He's running as a Republican. You're gonna get offended on his behalf. No, not happening. His name is Vivek. He can deal with it. Okay, he can deal with it. Frankly, it's not that hard to pronounce Vince. True, but if it's some like Vietnamese name that translates like Vin, you know, it's just, it is what it is. It is what it is. Okay. It is what it is. But anyways, folks, one last story and then we will move on to our super chats for the rest of the night. One last quick thing though I did want to talk about is reacting to this video you may have seen going around. This was sort of last week's news, but a video you saw going around on Twitter where this girl right here, I'm sure you've seen this by now, but a girl in San Francisco is complaining about a very violent interaction, not violent, but dangerous interaction she had with a certain delinquent individual of society, okay? And talking about how unsafe San Francisco is. And let's react to it, and then I'll give you some commentary on it, okay? But check it out. If you haven't seen this video yet, here it is. Check it out. Here's her feeling unsafe in San Francisco.
I was just getting groceries and I live in San Francisco and I never really feel fully safe. If you live in San Francisco, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And I just got groceries. I'm walking out of the store and this guy is walking past me and says, "Move, you stupid bitch." And he spits in my face, spits all over my face. And then I say, "Excuse me, did you just spit in my face?" And he says, "Move or I'll rape you." There's also people everywhere and everyone's just walking by because they're like, I can't handle something else in San Francisco. It's always something else. I don't even know why I'm posting this. If you live in San Francisco, do you feel this way all the time? I don't feel safe, ever. I literally never feel safe. It's better when it's daylight. But nighttime, no, not leaving my house.
So, you know, on the surface, I look at it and say that's very unfortunate and terrible, and I feel very bad for her. I know some people will say, well, that's her fault for living in San Francisco, but some people have to live in San Francisco, okay? It doesn't mean that they deserve that to happen to them. Okay, so it is very bad. It's very tragic. But what I think is worth pointing out, because obviously, you know, you can't necessarily control having to live in San Francisco or not. But what is in your control and what should be pointed out, and I think it is right to point out, is the fact that, well, you take a look at her TikTok here, okay, her past videos. It turns out she is a very vocal supporter of BLM. So there you go. You know, she has a hat. It's supposed to be like a MAGA hat, but it says Major Look Black Lives Matter. Only red hat that I stand, hashtag BLM. And so here you have an individual who just faced the consequences of the very policy she supports. Okay? So what I would say, so here's my response, because there's actually been this like right-wing debate on Twitter over it. Some people were saying people were being too mean. Some were saying you're being soft. You know, she should be called out for this. She shouldn't. Here's what I will say is that, as a Christian and all that, obviously I believe this, which is that people can have genuine changes of heart. Okay. People can change. People sometimes, as much as sometimes we do want to play Monday morning quarterback and say, well, what did you expect? People are stupid. Okay. People are stupid. And so I am totally open to the possibility that this woman changes her mind and has a change of heart because of the situation. However, what I would say is that in order for her to garner our sympathy, I think we need proof that that is going to happen. Right. So I think the proper response to settle the conservative debate, because some people were saying, you people dunking on her have no sympathy. And some people were saying you're being soft. My take on it is this. OK, because some people are saying you deserve this. You're not forgiven. OK, my take is that if you genuinely look at the situation and say, I learned from this, I'm not going to support Black Lives Matter anymore. I'm not going to keep voting for this stuff. I'm not going to keep tolerating this type of behavior in my city. And then I welcome her with open arms, right? Welcome to the movement. Welcome to the crowd. It's okay what you did in the past as long as you understand the mistake. Okay, that's my view on it. All right, I'm genuinely a pretty forgiving person in that regard. However, the evidence we've seen thus far is that she has not changed from her ways. She's not changed her mind in any regard. She still either does not see the inconsistency in what she believes, or more likely just literally doesn't care and is probably just going to blame white people or Republicans or MAGA or whatever it is for the whole situation. In that case, then, obviously I don't want this stuff to happen to her or anyone, but in another regard, it is genuinely kind of hard to feel bad. Right? Because if you support BLM, you vote for Democrats, you do that openly, and this happens to you as a result of those policies, right? Obviously, this stuff happens in San Francisco, but why does it happen so much? Why does she, quote unquote, in her own words, never feel safe in San Francisco? Well, if you're still going to be so idiotic and dumb and naive and just dishonest to look at what just happened to you and say, well, must be the white guy's fault, then what am I supposed to really feel bad about? It's hard to feel bad. So that's the take, is that she does deserve to be criticized. She should be called out. She should, frankly, be shamed for that decision of her past ideas, but at the same time have the open door to say, if you genuinely turn from your ways, if you genuinely change your mind, you're forgiven. Okay, but that's what it should be. That's what it should be. Okay, because some right-wingers were saying, you should have sympathy and compassion. Why are you attacking her for believing this? No, I think that's valid. It is valid to point out you believe this. At the same time, if you now see the error of your ways, okay, then it's fine. All right, listen. All right, as long as you see what's wrong and you're on our side. That's the way I see it. Okay, I'm not a purist. And it's the same thing even with, people who, let's say they're running for president, like in the last segment, and they change their mind on some things. You don't fully trust them. I'm open to people changing their minds. Okay. Now, if they're running for office, sometimes you have to try to discern, is it honest? Is it not? How do you tell? You can never really tell. But in a situation like this, I think it's totally possible and valid to change your mind. But like I said, there's no proof that she has done that. So yes, you should keep criticizing her and you should keep pushing back on her because there's no proof that she has done that. So that's where we are. But you guys can let me know your thoughts. But anyways, folks, it is now 9:10 p.m. We are now open to super chats and Q&A, ladies and gentlemen. So, I know we haven't done this in a long time, but we're now open to our Q&A. So any questions, comments, thoughts, concerns that you want sent and read and answered on the stream, feel free to do so via the super chats. I will check these super chats now. So we're now open to reading chat, ladies and gentlemen. But let's go take a look here. We can grant mercy at our discretion. I mean, look, I'm totally open to granting mercy. Okay, like 100%. I think if she came out and said, you guys are right about BLM, that's really all it takes for me. Okay, it's really, now to a degree, am I always going to have this contempt of, well, all of you guys, not just her, all of you guys who were doing the black square in 2020, there's some lives that were lost that cannot be taken back now, okay? Because there's some people who legitimately got permanently disabled or died because of these policies that you supported, okay? So to some degree, it's always going to be a little bit of, you know what I mean? But at the same time, it is what it is. It is what it is. I'm open to anyone genuinely having a change of heart, but I'm not. How can we grant mercy, quote unquote, if they don't even have a change of heart? Right? They're literally, she herself, from all accounts, is still stuck in her ways in every single regard. So, you know, but some people were saying you should have compassion for her. I mean, in a sense, I do. Like, yeah, it's bad that it happens to her, but at the same time, there's times in life where, to a degree, you know, something happens and you need to recognize that, oh, this happened because of this, right? Bad things happen, but you need to learn and understand why they happened. And if she's not going to have any introspection, if she's not going to have any reflection about it, then, like, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to throw her a parade? Right? It's very true. But anyways, let's get to our super chats here, ladies and gentlemen. Moana Desmond sends in $2. I appreciate it very much. Moana or Marna. Is it Marna or Moana? I think it's Marna. Marna for the 2. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Trigonaut for $5 says, Vince, any plan to invite us subscribers to talk with you again? That was a lot of fun, I will admit. Thank you for the $5, Trigonaut. I mean, we will definitely do it at some point, but I can't do it tonight because I don't know what it is. My voice hurts, okay? I was doing totally fine, and then the moment we got on stream, about 10 minutes in, you may be able to tell my voice is very scratchy, okay? So I'm going to call it a night after about 9:20 tonight and try to rest it. But yeah, some point, no promises, but some point this week, I'll try to do another call-in stream, hopefully when the voice is feeling better. So, but yeah, this is true. Thank you for the $5, though. Trigonaut, I appreciate it very much. But here we go. Vince super chatted to get your thoughts on California trans kids drama. Well, what specifically about it? What are they doing now? What are they doing now? Because obviously California is ran by the devil and has been for some time, but what specifically are they doing? I'm not sure. You got to let me know on that, Marna. JD for $2 says, foreign hero statue in US a sign of assimilation. What do you mean by that, JD? Thank you for the $2. I'm not sure what you mean by that. But as a matter of, should foreign heroes have their statues in America? I mean, I would say, generally speaking, no, especially not on government property. I mean, if someone wants to build a mural to, I don't know, Winston Churchill, you know, it's obviously, like, I don't think it's a serious problem. But in terms of, I mean, I do think, generally speaking, statues in America should be built to people who contributed to America. Now, I think if it's a significant historical figure like Julius Caesar, you know, it's, yeah, I mean, that's fine. But I'm not sure what you mean by that, JD, but thank you for the $2. I appreciate it very much. But let's take a look. AB957. Okay, well, I don't know what AB957 is, but I'm going to guess that it's evil and sick and demonic, okay? Would that be an adequate answer? Would that be an educated guess? It would be. So this basically is saying that if you're a parent, you have to affirm your child's quote-unquote gender identity, aka you gotta, if your kid says they're a girl, you have to tell them that they're a girl. Yeah, I mean, that's evil. What else is there to say? So basically, if your kid wants to be trans and you say no, CPS is going to come take your kids from you and they'll say you're a child abuser. Yeah. What can I say? Evil. Violation of so many things, but I would think, even from a court perspective, I mean, what about the First Amendment? What about free association? Yeah, but yeah, I mean, doesn't surprise me at this point. Yeah, that's basically what they do in Canada already. And yeah, it's evil. It's evil. And I think, you know, there's a certain point at which I don't truly encourage anyone to flee their states. I think there's something very noble about staying behind, even in a place like California. I mean, I didn't do it, but even in a place like California, you know, people, there's some conservatives who say it is noble to stay there and fight, to which I say I do think it's noble. But at a certain point, I have to say to some of the conservatives willingly staying in California, you know, if something like that does pass and you have to raise your children in a state like that, I mean, what are you going to do? You know, what are you going to do? And I do get criticism from some of the people who are conservatives who stayed in California. They say, Vince, you fled, you left. Like, how could you do that? And I get it. I do think there's something noble about saying I'm going to stay and fight for where I'm from and all that stuff. Like, I get all of that. And, you know, maybe if I had planted roots and raised a family in California, things would be different from my perspective. But I look at something like that and say, you know, how can I raise a future family or plant roots down in that state? And why should I willingly submit to doing that when I have a very open option to be somewhere else, you know? Like, how can I raise my kids in a state where, I mean, God forbid, if something like that happens, I'll literally get arrested for child abuse? Like, why would you willingly want to live in a place like that, you know? Obviously, if you are stuck in California, that's unfortunate, and I'm not saying you shouldn't fight. But just, I get this criticism from sometimes. People are like, why did you leave California? You should be staying and fighting for it. You know, that's where you're from. You're just fleeing, you're running. And maybe I am. Maybe I legitimately am. But, you know, for me, it's God, family, country. Right? That's the hierarchy. Okay? So, which means family comes before country. Okay? In that hierarchy. I don't see raising my kids in California as a good thing for them, as a good thing for the family, okay? Frankly, just numerically speaking, I can't raise as big a family in California because nothing is affordable and the taxes are too high, right? And then, you know, obviously, God forbid, whatever happens, but, you know, considering I am in the future likely going to be, you know, in at least the way I see it, my ambitions, right, a figure of prominence, and I'm going to have a target on my back. If it's a state where if I have to defend myself or defend my family, because, you know, I will have a target, if I'm going to get arrested for self-defense or I'm not allowed to conceal carry or whatever it is, like hate me if you want, I am, you know, I do like guns and stuff. And if I can't have that in the state, then how am I supposed to stay in that state? You know, it's just, I don't know. It is what it is. I remember there's some California conservatives that always give me crap for leaving. And I'm just, you know, yeah, to a degree it is selfish. I'll give you that. It is kind of retreatism. But at the end of the day, you know, I the way I see it, I'm doing what's best not just for me, but for my future family and my future career and all of that stuff, you know? So it is what it is. Like, what do you want me to do about it? What do you want me to do about it? I don't know. I'm glad I left. But anyways, guys, here we go. Let's get caught up on more super chats. So, by the way, I think at the same time, a lot of you are just jealous, okay? A lot of you Californians, you wish you had left too. And by the way, I'm not saying I don't sympathize with you, because I understand you're stuck there. I understand, you know, it's not easy for everyone to just leave. I'm not shaming anyone for staying in California. Don't make no mistake. I do not do that. I would never do that. But at the same time, how are you going to shame me for leaving? You know? It's like, if I'm not going to get on you for staying, then you shouldn't be getting on me for leaving. We all got to do what's best for ourselves at the end of the day and what's best for the situation around us. So, I don't know. It is what it is. I'm kind of talking to myself right now, but it is what it is. All right, anyways, let's get caught up here on our super chats. Sash McFlash for 2 Canadians says, your voice hurts from that Windsor knot. Do a half. All right, listen, Sash McFlash. I was a rush to get ready for the stream, okay? I just got back, all right? But, all right, thank you for the 2 Canadian, Sash McFlash. I appreciate it. Dollar for $2 says, thoughts on Gandhi? I'm not a Gandhi expert, but from my understanding, he's incredibly overrated as a historical figure and, frankly, a socialist. So, you know, not really the biggest Gandhi fan, to tell you the truth. I think that whole Gandhi thing is probably a psyop in many ways, is what I'll say about Gandhi. And what I will also say is the entire legacy, in my opinion, of colonialism and European colonization is very, very misrepresented, I will say. Okay? You know, they always paint the British Empire as the most... And by the way, I think even a lot of American conservatives make this mistake because we identify with our own revolution, and I get that. But I think in many ways, the historical atrocity or evil of British colonization around the world is grossly overstated. And frankly, I think when you look at a lot of Britain's former colonies, you know, the United States, which 1776, that's a long way back, okay? So I don't know if you can even really use that honestly. But most of Britain's former colonies, let's just be real, are doing worse off without her. You know, this is true. This is literally true. This is true. Okay. So, you know, I think part of the reason Gandhi is propped up is it's all a psyop. He was a socialist. He was a leftist. And I would even argue, like I said, the legacy of the whole idea of decolonization and anti-colonialism is kind of backwards, you know? I mean, frankly, let's be real about this. The world right now would be a better place if, especially after World War II, Europe didn't give up all of its colonies, you know? You're really going to look at sub-Saharan Africa today and tell me that it's better off now than it was under colonization? Of course not, you know? And there's a lot of examples. Now, India, you could argue, it does okay. Okay, it does okay. I mean, there's obviously things that are wrong with that country, but, you know, it does okay. You know, you could make the argument it's fine without colonization. But my overall point is that this whole idea of the historical evil of European colonization is just, it's such a backwards understanding of history, you know? Even America. I mean, let's be real about that. As much as a lot of conservatives view kind of the American Revolution as this thing that plopped up out of nowhere, that's not really an honest way to see it. I mean, this country its foundation was built by Europeans and European colonization and English common law and culture and all of that stuff. We're descended as a civilization from Britain. Part of the reason we became successful is because we built upon a lot of our British heritage. You know, that's just true. So overall, this whole idea that just, colonization was the worst thing that ever happened in history. No, it was actually one of the best things to happen. And, you know, it's, the world, you can make an objective argument that a lot of the world is worse off without it. So I'm not saying that Europe was perfect or everything they did or the British did or the French did, you know, is obviously perfect. But that's history. History is imperfect, you know? But, I mean, let's... At the time that Africa was colonized, which, you know, we're told was the most evil thing to ever happen in human history, in many parts of sub-Saharan Africa, in the 1800s, they did not even invent the wheel, okay? They did not have the wheel, all right? So, you know, and I'm not making the argument, everything was justified because they introduced the wheel to Africa, okay? I'm not saying that. But, you know, there's an argument to be made, look, a lot of conquest happens, a lot of killing happens. I mean, welcome to human history, okay? The difference is that European colonization is one of the few examples, and you could argue the Roman Empire and other things, but one of the few examples where the conquest actually brought a lot of good to the world, you know? For instance, the wheel, okay? So I don't, I mean, you guys get the point that I'm making, but I think part of the reason why someone like Gandhi is propped up, even though he, like I said, a socialist, not really the best guy that he's made out to be, is again because it's to demonize the legacy of colonization itself, which I would argue even then that whole understanding and debate, in my opinion, is frankly just backwards, like genuinely. So, you know, this is true. But anyways, guys, let's take a look. Let me make sure there's no super chats on Rumble. I don't believe there are. Okay. But shout out to everyone who's watching us right now on Rumble and Twitter, of course, as usual. All right. This will probably be the last super chat, but last call for super chats, ladies and gentlemen. Anything you want to send in, feel free to do so now. But JD for $2 says there's a Gandhi Park and his statue in Irving, Texas. Thank you for the $2. Well, I really wonder why that is, right? Yeah. Just overrated guy overall. Very overrated figure. You know? This is true. Chesscom Support says, I don't think holding on to colonies is compatible with non-interventionism. Well, this is because America is not Europe, okay? Part of the idea of non-interventionism is that I view America as being a republic, okay? I don't think America's destiny or identity was ever meant to be empire, you know? We have too many republican aspects in kind of our founding, right? That's our heritage as a country. That's our identity as a country. And frankly, we have everything we need as a country on these 50 states plus Alaska and Hawaii anyway, you know? But Europe is a different place, you know? Because that's part of my thing is I'm for tradition, okay? The American tradition, you're right, is isolationism. Although you could argue in itself that's not really the case, because you could argue our conquest of the West is interventionism, but isolationism beyond our continent, you know what I mean? But at the same time, those old European monarchies, they are imperial, they're empires, you know, they are. So I think it's America has a way of doing it. America was never destined to be an empire. I agree with you there. But Europe, many of those countries were built on imperialism. So I think they're two different things in two different worlds, frankly, you know? So that's just the way I see it. Rome started as a republic. Well, that is also true. But you know, that's the way I see it overall. But anyways, guys, if we got no more super chats, I will probably wrap up the stream here tonight. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. It is great to be back. I'm glad to be back, of course, with all you guys. Miss you guys. We did see some of you on Rumble. But yeah, last call, okay? Subscribe to the Rumble. Sign up to the email list. Both links are in the description. So that way, you know, if we do get another strike, it's not a matter if I missed you guys. You guys just all follow me over, which is, of course, the way we all want it to be, right? So subscribe to the Rumble. Sign up for the email list. And that way you can stay notified if we get deplatformed again. But anyways, guys, thank you to everyone who tuned in. Before we go, let's get the stream to 100 likes. So everyone leave a like right now on the stream. And I will see you all live tomorrow night, same time, same place. Hoping my voice feels better on this channel at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And until then, folks, Alpha moves only. Everyone have a very good night. God bless and peace.